don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider. So you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts. So make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD, Annabel, and Melissa.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam podcast. I'm JD, and as always, I have my wonderful co-host, Melissa.
Me.
Melissa, how are you today?
I am great. Thanks. Thank you. And I'm so happy we have Jake with us today.
Yeah. Jake, welcome to our podcast. You are a active duty Marine, been a Marine for 14 years. You also do a lot of commercial syndications, and in the way you kind of described yourself to me is I would say you're a jack of all trades, and we're super excited to have you on here to speak to our audience. And kind of, I guess, really, you're more of an entrepreneur, and you're looking for opportunities to help yourself and those around you. Is that a good description there, Jake?
Yeah, and JD and Melissa, it's great to be on here. I appreciate you having me on your show. But yeah, actually, you probably said it better than I did, right? So just a general entrepreneur and looking to connect people and with real estate opportunities. So
yeah, that's great. Well, Jake, this is our first time meeting, but you and Melissa have dealt with each other in the past, and I'm sure our audience, maybe they know you or maybe they don't, but can you kind of give us a rundown of how your real estate career started and kind of how you got to where you're at now, and then we'll follow conversation from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like you mentioned, I've been in the Marine Corps for going on 15 years. But now, so I've been here in Pensacola as a helicopter instructor pilot for going on about 7 years. And the reason I've been here so long is because in the military you're required to promote, and if you don't, you get forced out. So you get 2 opportunities, at least for the officer side. And so I was actually passed over in the December of 16, the first time. And, it was kind of a gut check to me, because I wasn't really expecting that. And so I told my wife, and we didn't do anything with real estate at that point. I had read a couple books, looked a little bit into wholesale, and I said, hey, we're going to go buy a house. And she's like, well, how? I was like, I don't know. And so a week later, we went under contract on our first house. Did a BRRRR, everybody kind of knows, most people know what a BRRRR is, right? And it worked out, and we did a refi, and we had, about 40, 50K laying around. And how I got in the commercial side is I had a buddy who had put a mobile home park, a small mobile home park in town here in Milton, under contract. And he said, hey, I got this thing. And I said, I kind of turned my nose up at it, like most people do with mobile home parks, at least they used to do, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty ugly. And so I was kind of tentative, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of a ready, fire, aim guy anyway. Let's screw it. Let's do it. So we just threw the money in, and I said, but the caveat to this is I get to run the park. I get to do the reposition. I got to learn. I'm going to be the one that goes and does all that stuff. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. He was actually acting as kind of my backstop, and he did come in and jump in a few times when needed, when he was, kind of giving me rudder steers here and there, to make sure, he didn't go too far out in left field. But, I kind of made some expensive and time, both in money and time mistakes. And we had actually, me and my partner, Blake, who's also another PIG member. We've kind of since partnered up. He was also in on that deal, and that's how we met. We bought a mobile home park, actually it was a little bit smaller one in Alabama, and we bought that one wrong. Literally, if there was a way to buy something wrong, we did it. We didn't do the proper underwriting. We didn't do our due diligence. We bought it with credit cards. We hired a terrible property manager, a guy who ended up, being a kind of basic criminal, right? Correct, right? 2 of them actually. And so we learned a lot through, our dealings, and both that first one, just because it was such a big project, and the second one, because it was bought so poorly. But, fast forward a few months later, what that did is it actually allowed us the opportunity and gave us the lessons to buy an 85 space park up in Indiana that we bought very well, and have since basically turned, we did a syndication, we raised the capital, and we've turned that into soon to be about $4.3 million worth of assets for our company. So, which is pretty cool.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's how I got into it.
Hey, Melissa, did his property management story sound familiar to you at all?
Yeah, just a smidge.
I know.
Jake, you're talking about Blake Woodham, right?
Actually, Blake Radijak. Blake Woodham does buy commercial stuff as well.
Yeah.
He's actually just got orders overseas, so he's got it all up round. But yeah, Blake and I have Blake Woodham, have done some stuff together with Florida Cash Real Estate, which is our wholesaling company. That myself and Tyler Austin, again, another pig guy, right? So you kind of see where that web continues to expand, and what we talked about. So, and how I'm kind of doing that. I'm not a commercial guy. I'm not a flipper. I'm not a wholesaler. I'm just kind of an entrepreneur that just goes into things that make sense and that, excite me. So, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And then I've slowly built my own single family portfolio. I've got the wholesaling company inside that holding company, wholesaling company. We have a holding company that we've created and branched off. We've got a mobile home park we actually just locked up the other day in Crestview. So, we're doing a lot of stuff, there. We've got apartment complexes, and then we've got, another partner, on the self-storage side, with a couple other guys that are very experienced in the space. And I basically traded equity for their expertise and their mentorship and learning how to do it. And it's totally worth it. So
that's awesome. That's kind of what we do outside of the syndication. We just, whatever works for the deal is kind of where we're at too. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. You do what you got to do. You get the deal done. Right.
Right. Exactly.
That's right. And you just, because there's so many different avenues that you have experience in, I think we'd be, chasing our tail if we try to track down every one of them. But one of the things that I think I'm super interested in is your self-storage stuff and kind of how you got into that and what those deals look like, how you're finding them, how you're operating them, where the value add part of that deal is. Can we break down that deal a little bit and kind of go down that route?
Good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually found this one initially from me looking for single family stuff. I had off the wall talked to a realtor who had basically a pocket listing. They're more of like a higher end. That's what they focused on. But one of their sellers had a kind of a junky duplex, and he asked if I would want it. I said sure, and long story short, that one didn't work out, but I tell all the realtors and brokers and lenders that I talk to, I said, hey, if you got any mobile home parks or apartment complexes, let me, you come up, let me know. And I'd like to, have a look at them. And he said, well, I don't have any of those. And he was a residential guy, but he's like, you don't do self-storage, do you? And I said, of course I do. Right. And
say yes, commit first and figure it out later.
Right. Exactly. Figure it out on the way down. Right. So, and I said, yeah, sure. And he's like, well, I got this one that's kind of out there up in Milton. He's like, and I was like, okay, I probably know where it is. I almost guarantee you don't. And I kind of knew which one he was probably going to talk about when he said out of the way, because this storage facility is right by Whiting Field, which I go by 10 times a day, or 10 times a week, once there, once home. And sure enough, he's like, yeah, it's this one stowaway. And I was like, I know it. And I've been meaning to actually stop in. I knew that I looked in the records and the owners actually lived next door. And he said, wow, he's like, well, I know that they were kind of friends with the owners. And so he just put me in touch. He just kind of did the introduction, and I kind of took it from there. The guy was a retired, full bird colonel in the Marine Corps, served in Vietnam, grunt. So it was obviously a very easy, relationship, rapport to build, right? The lady, they were actually married after both their spouses died. He was military. So it was really easy. And they were getting out. They were in their 70s. they were just kind of done with it. They'd built it up since the late 90s. And so, they had an appraisal that had been done back in 2014 or so, and they basically wanted that for it, which at the time was I think 315, and that was based off of like the cash it was a combination. There was like they do like it's based off of the value of the property, the real property, and the actual personal property. They do it based off the cash flow, and there's kind of that hybrid. So they kind of did it well off the hybrid.
How many units were we talking, and what were the average rents at the time?
So 111 total spaces. It was a combination of 5 by 10s, 10 by 10s, 20 by 10s, or 10 by 20s, excuse me, with by 10, and there's a couple, one or two 10 by 30s. So they were about 50 to 60% under market, right? They hadn't raised rents in a long time. They had about a 40% occupancy, and they had no online presence. They if you Googled stowaway storage, it wouldn't even put like a pin there, right? There's no website, there's no number. You could kind of roundabout find the number and the address if you knew what you were looking for, but if you just Googled storage, it wasn't there, right? And we all know in the 21st century, like your online presence is everything, right? Yeah. And the ability to easily sign up as a tenant, just sign up. I don't have to talk to anybody. Boom, it sends me my code. I hop in the gate. I got my thing. My lock's already in the unit. Boom, and then I just pay auto draft or whatever. When I move out, I say, hey, here's my notice, and I never have to talk to anybody, and it's easy, right? Yeah. They weren't set up that way. So I knew that we needed to get there, but I didn't really know how, right? So I talked to my buddy, and I had talked to him before, Jonathan Faircloth, and so he's also a PIG member, and we ended up him and his brother partner up, and we kind of all went in on this thing together. So we kind of went back and forth on the offer and everything. They were wanting to offer like 225, something like this, and I was like, no, man, let's just go big, right? And I said, so I went in and I offered them 185 cash, and they took it. They didn't like it, but they took it, right? So we were going to buy it cash. It took them a while they wanted to wait till the beginning of 2020 for tax purposes. So he said, that's fine. That actually gave us more time. And then it also kind of got us thinking. We're like, well, this is in October. We went under contract. So instead of having to close in 45 days or so, we can draw this out. We can get a loan, and we can get an SBA loan, a 10% down loan, right, that we can build in a asset management or acquisition fee into the closing cost that we can basically get our 10% back. So we did that. It took a lot longer. We had planned. The bank was just a pain in the ass to deal with. Sorry. No swearing here, sir. Anyway, they were a pain in the butt to deal with, right? And we ended up getting it done, though. We actually closed in very 1st of March, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And so the appraisal came in, the as-is appraisal came in at 370. Nice. So we basically bought it at half price, which is pretty cool. And then so we've since put in an automatic gate. We've got an online portal for all the tenants to go in. We've got the new signage up. We're going to have some more signage, bandit signs, kind of those flags you see at a car dealership. We're going to put those up. We're just kind of waiting for them. Some of that's taking a little bit. So everything is all automated. There's no on-site management, and that's kind of the way they bought some kind of mom and pop rural type stuff, and right, they've done pretty well with it. So that was March of 2020 that you picked that up, or that was March of 2021? 21 last month. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So this is my first entry into self-storage, but yeah, I mean, I've got an understanding I had an understanding and just had been wanting to do. I just hadn't found a good deal yet. Right. Yeah.
My question is, because I want to ask this early on. So how do you as partners make decisions about how it's going to be, what you're going to spend on it, how it's going to be marketed, what you're going to do to bring it up? How do y'all make those decisions?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question, because even you always want to go into every property or every business and treat it as a business. Like, you can be friends, you can be family, but you have to still treat it as a business. And so what we did, and that I'd done businesses before that with friends that didn't work out. And unfortunately, we're no longer friends. There were some unethical things that happened. But even guys that I'm still, good friends with, we've gotten into, I mean, Blake, or even, Tyler, or my Bob, like we've gotten into things because we didn't have a clearly defined role, or we didn't have clearly defined roles or responsibilities. So I knew that was going to be a big thing. And I, going into with John, I knew Jonathan, but I hadn't worked with him really. And his brother, Richard, who's a great guy, but we didn't really know each other. And I was like, hey, let's just start this off right. Let's all we got a piece of paper, and we went and grabbed coffee, and first of all, we talked about how we were going to close it and different plans. We said, hey, your role is the back channel, the lease ups, the customer relations. Your job is the acquisitions and lending. Your job is the kind of the maintenance, the management side of it. And we, just went down the list of all the different things. Who's handling bookkeeping? Who's handling this? Who's doing this? And so now we just kind of update each other either via email or a group text, like, hey, this has been done, or hey, we paid this guy. Hey, these guys are coming in this time, and then, obviously if, Jonathan has something come up where he was going to be somewhere, he can't. Hey, Jay, can you go, do this? Yeah, sure. I'll be there on Monday. That's that way we can kind of flex, and that's perfectly fine. But that was how we did it, to where we were able to, clearly define roles. And we all kind of are able to do other things. Obviously Richard, for example, is much better at the customer relations, because he set up the portal, and he set up all the different subscriptions and stuff. So he knows it. That's been what he's done. Jonathan is better with the, kind of the, the property management, the actual physical management of it. and we're all pretty decent at specifically Jonathan and I, with the acquisitions and the, things like that, and the contractors and stuff like that. That's, and fixing up the place and keeping it running and all that. So marketing.
And then as the follow-up to that, how do you all decide about how much money is going to be spent on anything, just the marketing or the signs, or just all of those things, the gate, those things are just, they add up?
Yeah, they do. Well, and that goes into underwriting. So when we went into this property, we knew, hey, so for example, the 185 was the purchase price. We knew that even if we didn't, use a bank, there was going to be a few thousand in closing costs. That's just going to happen, right? There's going to be, insurance that you got to pay up front. There's going to be taxes and all those things you're going to probably have to pay. And so we just, and also we said, hey, this is what it's going to take to automate. And again, the reason I partnered with them is because this was their 5th facility. So they had an idea of what things actually cost. It's just like the first time you go to rehab a house, especially if you try doing it in the end of 2020 or now, your numbers are going to be wildly different if you try to do it a couple of years ago, right?
Right.
So if that's the first time you've done it, after you've done 5 of those houses, you can say, all right, I'm going to re-drywall a house. It's going to cost me X amount per square foot, give or take, right? Or I'm going to put flooring in, and it's, $7 a square foot to do vinyl plank, that kind of stuff. So they kind of knew what a gate was going to cost. They knew, and also who to talk to, how much it was going to cost for the internet, the landscape. Well, we all kind of knew landscaping because we do a lot of it with the mobile home parks and our personal stuff. But we figured all that out ahead of time. That's part of underwriting, right? We said, hey, before we even close, we knew exactly what things were going to cost, or had a very good idea. We already got multiple bids we had 3 gate bids. We had 3, contractor or landscape bids. We had all that kind of stuff, right? And we knew generally it was going to cost, we budgeted, let's say, $2,000 for, signage and flags and all that stuff. Marketing per month was going to cost X. We're currently bringing in, because we're buying a underperforming facility. So we know that our cash flow position is going to be a little bit light. But yeah, that's how we were able to, we already knew generally what it was going to cost. And we just said, hey, Jonathan, you're in charge of the gate. Jake, you're in charge of the landscaping. Richard, you're in charge of the marketing, getting all that set up. And then we just said, hey, if there was, it was cheaper, and like, hey guys, we got extra money. Or if it was a couple $100 or $1,000 more for something bigger, it's like, hey, it's going to cost this because it's 2021, right?
Right.
Whatever, right? So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. So now you said that the rents were under market and that you were about 40% occupancy. So now what are you guys doing to increase occupancy, and have you started to increase the rents, or what's your strategy look like to bring that stuff up to market? Are you going to get people in there first and then up the rents? Or are you doing a combination of both at the same time? What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So, and we found this through with mobile home parks as well, but there's a time and a place to do incremental increases. But at the end of the day, if you go right up to market, and I'll get to your question, if you go right up to market, the end result is, where else are they going to go for cheaper or the same price, right? Okay, yeah, you want to move all your stuff, but you're going to go down the road to Milton Storage, and they're either more or they're going to cost the same. And now you just had to move all your stuff, right? So we actually went up just a shade under market day one. We actually sent out a letter 30 days prior to closing, and we had the sellers actually write the letter, and with basically we wrote it, but they signed it. Right. And then they sent out we sent kind of a welcome letter day one or a couple days before. So I got there day one. Hey, here's a new park, or here's the new facility. Here's how it's going to work, all that kind of stuff. And then, so we had a few that nobody really complained about it, but we had a few that they were already going to be moving out to begin with. Cause for example, one guy had 3 units and he was building a house, and he completed right around when we closed. So he was moving out. So we went down a little bit and then we went back up. So we're still at about that 40% occupancy. I have to look at the numbers. We use a product called Store Edge. So it kind of sounds like storage, but Store Edge. And that's where we can go in and we can track all of our occupancy. We can track the rates. We can see who's paid, who's delinquent, how much, when they're due, when their lease update is, when their anniversary date is, all that kind of stuff. And we can actually assign hey, overlock this one or do this and things like that. So that we're in the, like I said, we just completed getting the gate set up. So there was some things that, some value add or some things that had to happen before we could really progress. We've got our Google page up, Google Me page, all that stuff. We've got signs up, newer signs. We've got some other ones on order to increase the visibility and things like that. But it takes, we anticipated 60 to 90 days to really get it to where it's okay, now, now it's ready to go. Now, in the meantime, we might get a few lease ups, but the anticipation is that we're not getting a whole lot. So in our underwriting, and I highly suggest this, you always want to build in some operating expenses, right? You don't want to just, it's your reserves or your safety blanket or whatever you want to call it, right? But you build in those reserves on top of the ones that the bank requires you to have for escrow and as well as, just mortgages and stuff, but have that. And what we do is we can operate out of that if our income doesn't meet or exceed our mortgage, right?
Right.
Another thing you can do, especially when you're dealing with commercial loans, is that you can pretty much do whatever you want as long as you and the bank both agree to it, right?
Right.
So we went with the SBA. We said, hey, can you guys make interest only payments for 18 months? And they said, sure. And we said, okay. So we got interest only for 18 months, which is significant on a 30-year AM, right?
Yeah.
So
is it 111 units? Is that enough to have some sort of on-site employee, or how are you? Because you mentioned that you can mark on there that they need to be overlocked and that kind of stuff. How are you guys doing that? Or is it the 3 of you running around to meet those needs for right now? Or do you plan on hiring somebody? What's that look like for you?
Yeah. So when you get to a certain size, when you get to, 250 plus, maybe a little bit more, you got to have somebody on site. There's just too much and it justifies it. But when you're smaller like that, the question becomes, well, how do you keep it up and running and operating without getting killed on an employee, right? On payroll. So the way we do it, and so it kind of ties into the automated process for people getting, their rentals or their unit, as well as, their payments and all that kind of stuff. And so we have a guy who goes in on a weekly basis, and we can kind of adjust that. It depends on the park or the facility. I keep saying park, but the facility. Yeah. And he'll go in and he'll do like spraying weeds, doing some basic landscaping, mowing. I mean, it's Florida, right? Like it's growing season. It's a constant battle, right? So he'll go in and do that kind of stuff, check to make sure there's nobody hit, a corner or did any damage. And then while he's doing that, he's checking the individual units and cross-checking them against his list of these ones should be rented, these ones aren't. And we've got a way to identify which ones are rented or not. So it's pretty simple. So because the gate is locked, we don't really need to be super fancy. Like in order to get into our facility, you have to have a code, i.e. you've had to have paid for a unit.
Right.
So what we do though is we just put a zip tie through the open ones, and then we put a lock inside of it. It's cleaned out and it's a lock inside. So if they're assigned that one, the store edge automatically assigns them a unit. They go in, cut the zip tie, go in, they've got their nice, lock, and that's built in to the price of that lock is built into their, management or whatever you call it, the account management fee, right? Mm-hmm. $15 or whatever. And so they get that there. So they all use the same locks. And so also we know that our lock cutter can cut the lock if and when we need to, right? And then he goes in. So if he sees one that's supposed to have a zip tie and it doesn't, or it's got a lock on it, if it doesn't have a lock, there's nothing there. Somebody might just put some stuff in, or so he can check it up. For whatever reason, it broke off, or somebody thought there was this one, they realized, and they went to the other one. Obviously, they don't have another zip tie, right? Or if there's a lock on, we can say, hey, this one needs an overlock. And he can just go put an overlock on, that kind of thing. So we call it a lock check is what we call it. So he's kind of the handyman. And then if we need springs or doors or paint or whatever done, he does that. Plus he also does that. So it's kind of built in.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense. I guess it's not, you don't get into this business so that you're the one running around spraying weeds and doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And you could. But it's just a matter of how involved you want. And if you find somebody who does it for a good price and everybody's happy, then do it.
Do you have projections on how long it's going to take you guys to get what you would consider stabilized? And when it is stabilized, are you looking at like 90% occupancy rate, or what is your goal, and how long, what's that timeline?
Yeah. So it is a little bit of a unique facility because of its proximity. It's not on 87. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 80s, like the Whiting Field base there, but anyway, there's 87. It's pretty highly trafficked, but it's actually on the road that literally leads into base. So you get several thousand, sailors, Marines, and Air Force and Coasties going by it every day, plus all the contractors. So it gets a lot of visibility just by a very kind of niche, group. So that's what the need for, not only the visibility, but also for the online presence, so people know where it's at. So we're definitely targeting them, for sure. We anticipate once we get all this stuff up and running, in about 6 to 9 months, we should be, adding about 20% and then of occupancy, and then we should be able to add another 3 units a month or so. So at about 12 months, we should be at above the 85%, which is kind of considered stabilized in the storage facility market. 80% is typically is like apartments or mobile home parks, things like that. So 85%. Once you hit about 90 to 93%, your rates are too low. Like that means you need to up your rates. So if you look around the local area, most places are 98 to 100%. So like there's no storage out here. Now there's places that have been built up, and there's some more, climate controlled stuff, but stuff, that is just not enough there. And you've seen how, you can see anywhere, not just here in the Panhandle, but there's a new neighborhood popping up. It seems like every week. I mean, I fly over them, and it's like every week there's a new neighborhood popping up, hundreds of units. So there's just so much demand. And, now they're built. And that was the other thing we saw, they're building another, we're getting a new aircraft. So the aircraft that I've been flying for the last 7 years and that the Navy has been flying up at Whiting, the helicopter, for the last almost 40 years, is getting replaced by a brand new aircraft. And they're building a depot level maintenance facility right off the back gate. So we're going to be adding several hundred to 1,000 more employees, civilian employees and contractors. Wow. Plus all the back gates starting to blow up. There's stuff back there. It's going to be, we're seeing a growing demand. There's a new neighborhood going right on the other side of 87. So it's going to be there. So, and, HOAs are getting more and more restrictive. So we also have room. So it's not just 111 units. We've also got, RV and boat storage and things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. But that's what we're looking at. We're hoping, and again, our projections are, sometime beginning of next year to where we should be fully stabilized. And then our rents should be at or right around market, which is about 65 to 70 cents a square foot average. Smaller units tend to rent higher per square foot, bigger units a little bit more, less. And we're also looking to convert some of our 5x10s, because we've got quite a few of them, into 10x10s, because those rent better.
Okay.
So
yeah, it seems like you guys are well on your way to first off, it sounds like you got a killer deal, and that you aligned yourself with some people that had expertise in that niche, and that's been super beneficial to you going that route. I think that's genius level stuff, right? You don't have to know exactly how to do everything. You don't have to know how to figure it out, but you definitely make your money by knowing how to identify people that can help you get to those goals. And I think that's huge. And you displayed that. Not only do you display that, but through your syndication stuff, you are helping other people with that same kind of thing. Do you want to take, just a few more minutes, talk about some of your syndication type opportunities and how people can find out more about that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So one of the mobile home parks, the big one we did up in Indiana that has now basically turned into a fund, we've had to convert into we converted into a fund, was a syndication. So, the SEC has a lot of constraints and requirements, not only in how the deal is and the company is structured, but also on how we can and who we can speak to and how we can and when we can and timelines and stuff like that. Unfortunately, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, it's a lot of gray area. But what we like to do is we always we're always looking for partners and investors, right? A lot of people don't realize, they think that you either have to find the deal and bring the deal, and some money, and that's where you get equity, or you have to be completely passive and then just bring money to the table and get a return. You can, and that's great. I mean, you can use your own cash you got in the bank. You can use an IRA, through a self-directed IRA custodian. You can use a 401k to invest. A lot of people don't realize that it doesn't have to be just invested in stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but if you want to have a little bit more control over it, that's a way to do it. Right. But there's also other ways. So some people who may not have the experience or the desire, like myself and my partners, to actually run and manage the park and do the day-to-day and deal with the investors and the SEC and the tax or the CPAs and all that kind of stuff. If they bring us the deal, right, we can actually do a couple of things. We can do an assignment fee like a wholesaler would, where we give them X amount of money for us to have the deal. Or if they want to join in and share in the not only the profits, but the tax benefits, not get crushed by that wholesale or the taxes on that short-term gains on those wholesale assignment fees, which I'm very familiar with. I have a wholesaling company, so I get it. Yeah. But they can actually get equity and then actually share in the depreciation. So we typically get about 20 to 30% of the value or the purchase price of the park plus improvements in the first year in depreciation through the bonus depreciation and the cost seg. Yeah. So what I would definitely like to do is I love to talk to people. You probably known it, JD and Melissa. I'm sorry if I've been talking over you here,
No,
but
it's been perfect.
So again, back to the SEC, they do require that we do a couple things first. And it's super easy. It sounds a lot more scary than it is, but we just have to have a conversation. We have to talk with people. We have to, build some rapport and explain everything that we do and how we do it. And I don't want to do it just because I have to. I like to talk to other investors, other people who are looking to not only diversify their portfolio, but grow their wealth, right? And that's the biggest thing that my partners and I like to say. We consider ourselves stewards of our investors' wealth, and their money is infinitely more important than what we make, right? We get paid last, and so the tax man always gets paid first, then the bank. Our investors get it. If there's anything left over, that's what we get. If there's nothing left over, guess who doesn't get paid, right? So that's how it works, and we work for you guys, right? So, but I'd love to talk to you about other ways to get involved. And honestly, people just bring in capital. There's certain ways that it has to be done, but we can actually JV and bring people in on the general partnership side. So the actual management side of the house for bringing capital to a deal. So you don't even have to bring your own money. You can, and again, there's certain ways to sure, but it can be done. And we actually did that. We wouldn't have closed that deal up in Indiana. And subsequently grown it, by almost 8 times its initial value in 2 years if we hadn't had an investor partner who came in and helped us, bring some outside investors to the deal. So, and we did it the right way. So, it was kosher. So.
Absolutely. And that's amazing. So if somebody was trying to, establish or make a pre-existing relationship with you, and they're trying to get in contact with you to have conversations like that, where do you think the best way for them to find you?
Yeah. So I like to talk. I like to have a phone conversation, text is fine too, but the best way to get a hold of me is my phone. My number is 850-797-6137. You can also email me so our investment company is Prop and Rotor Investments. So you can email info@propandrotor.com, all spelled out, and that'd be the best way to get a hold of me via email. But yeah, again, phone's the best way. Talk, give me a call, text me, whatever. Love to chat. So.
Well, I had a really good time chatting with you guys. As in, I didn't.
Yeah, it was fun. I like I said, I told you before we got this started, I can get going. So you just got to break something.
I had lots to say.
Listen, JD does that to me every week, and I just wait for a time to
jump in.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, it's been fun.
But thank you, Jake. That was, we have a lot of people interested in the storage part of that, so that'll be very great info.
Yeah, the storage industry, like the mobile home park industry, probably about 10 years ago, is very fragmented. So, which means a lot of mom and pop owners, not a lot of sophisticated or like REITs investors are in it. There are some, and it's getting more mainstream, but it's probably the last, kind of wild west of the big commercial things. And the great thing is I don't have to worry about any eviction moratoriums because it's personal property.
Yep.
Hey, you don't pay, I lock your stuff and I sell it to somebody else, the highest bidder.
Love it.
Storage wars. That'll be our next episode when we have tell us about how much stuff you had to sell. Well, Jake, we really appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, Jake.
Sharing your expertise, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. JD and Melissa, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, check out our website, therealestatejam.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter @The Real Estate Jam. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at therealestatejam@gmail.com. See you next episode.